Welcome to The Inner Elder, conversations about what we've learned from life. Today, David Lowry explores a shift in perspective that often only comes with time, the move from being a fixer to becoming a presence. For much of our lives, we are taught that to care is to intervene. If someone is hurting, we solve it. If we are struggling, we work on ourselves like a project that never ends. But as we grow into our inner elder, we begin to sense a different kind of power. It isn't the power of doing, but the power of staying.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Inner Elder, conversations about what we've learned from life. I'm David Lowry, your host, and today we're exploring the shift in perspective that only comes from time, the move from being a fixer into a presence. Before I get into my first segment here, I want to introduce a word that anchors our conversation today. The word is Satsang. It's a Sanskrit word that's a combination of two words, Sat, which means truth, and Sangha, or the company or community. So Satsang means being in the company of highest truth. And in the context of the inner elder, Satsang isn't about debating doctrine or defending a belief. It's about practicing a transformative presence. It's a willingness to sit with what is real, whether it's grief or joy or silence, and we do so without trying to fix it, manage it, or change it. It's the radical act of letting the moment speak for itself. That's something we all have to work on, I think. The quiet power of transformative presence is our first segment. Comes a moment in life, often later than we expect, when we realize that transformation was never something we could engineer, not in ourselves and not in anyone else. Of course, we spent years trying, and we learned, and we strove, and we corrected, and we improved. We pushed the river, believing that the effort was the engine of growth. But Satsang is a different truth. It's a quieter one. It's a wiser one. Transformation is not the result of effort. It's the result of an encounter with truth, not as a doctrine, not as a belief, but the simple, unadorned presence of what is here before me now. Truth in this sense is not something that we argue or defend. It's something we meet. It shows up as grief that hasn't been hurried. It's a joy that you don't have to justify. It may show up as a silence that doesn't apologize for its depth. It can be honesty that no longer sharpens into self-defense. Satsang is the willingness to sit with these things without trying to fix them, and without trying to fix ourselves. In fact, without trying to fix anyone. And this is where the teaching becomes really revolutionary. Most of us carry a lifelong belief that peace is on the other side of change, that something has to shift before we can rest, that we have to be better, wiser, calmer, more healed before we can go on to ourselves. But Satsang turns the world gently on its axis. Peace is not the reward for transformation. Peace is what's available when we stop resisting what's already here. Presence precedes the change. And paradoxically, when something is fully allowed, it begins to soften on its own. This is the inner elder's way. Not disengagement and not indifference, but a deeper engagement, one that does not rely on control. Earlier in life, we would ask things like, how do I fix this? What should I say? How do I help somebody change? But the inner elder asks different questions. Can I be here without needing to change this? Can I let the moment speak for itself? Can I trust what unfolds in presence? This shift isn't a small one. It's a reorientation of the inner life. And nowhere is it more powerful than when we sit with someone who's in pain. When someone's in pain, our instinct is to advise or to soothe or to redirect or to try to solve something. But Satsang involves a more refined courage. It means to stay present. Let their experience be what it is. Resist the urge to make someone's pain about your need to help. In that field of non-interference, something remarkable happens. People feel seen, but not managed. Emotions complete themselves, and something deeper than advice begins to emerge. Presence will heal where solutions cannot. What we offer others, we must eventually learn to offer ourselves. To sit in Satsang with your own life means noticing your thoughts without chasing them, allowing emotions without labeling them as problems, letting your inner experience unfold without constant correction. Instead of asking, why am I like this? Or, I need to fix this feeling, the inner elder says, this too belongs. Let me stay with this a little bit longer. Over time, you become a safe place for your own life to unfold. You are a sanctuary rather than a project. Nothing about this moment disqualifies you from being whole. Not your fear, not your confusion, not your longing, not your unfinishedness. Wholeness is not the result of correction. It's the fruit of being present. How do we do this? One way is just to pause more. Pause 2 or 3 seconds before you let your words rise. Come from presence and not from reflex. Maybe spend 5 to 10 minutes a day just simply sitting. Not to meditate correctly, not to improve, just to be. Maybe you can listen without preparing. In conversation, notice the urge to craft a response, but let that go. Just let listening be enough. Maybe most important, stay with the discomfort. When something uncomfortable arises, just stay a little bit longer than usual, and this is how your capacity will grow. Satsang teaches you the simple, liberating truth. You're not the source of transformation in others or yourself. You're just a space in which transformation can become possible. Sit with this question. Where am I trying to create change when I'm simply invited to be present?
We've just explored how transformation is a result of encounter rather than effort. But if we are honest, sitting in that unadorned presence is incredibly difficult. Our reflex is to jump in and do something. We've spent decades believing that our value is measured by how effectively we can intervene in a crisis. In this next segment, we're going to look at why that instinct to fix might actually be a hurdle to the very healing we want to provide. We call this the illusion of intervention.
There's a tender illusion that many of us carry for decades that we inherit long before we ever question it, and it's the belief that love is measured by how effectively we intervene. If someone is hurting, we want to help them. If someone is lost, we want to offer guidance. If something is broke, maybe we can fix it. And there's goodness in this, and there's heart in this. This is a sincere desire to ease suffering. But beneath this instinct lies a subtle assumption that something or someone must be corrected before they can be whole. For much of life, we don't see the cost of this assumption. We simply move towards pain with tools in hand, believing that repair is the highest form of care. But as the years accumulate, life begins to reveal the limits of intervention. Because not everything can be fixed. You can't fix grief or aging or loneliness. You can't fix the deep questions that rise in the night when your soul is speaking in its oldest voice. And perhaps more importantly, the soul itself is not a problem to solve. Intervention fails us so often. There are experiences that just won't respond to advice or strategy, not because we're failing, but because these experiences were never meant to be solved. Grief doesn't yield to an explanation. Aging doesn't negotiate with you. The existential questions you carry don't disappear. The more clarity you get, the more questions you have. And loneliness isn't going to be cured by logic. These are just conditions of being human. And if we treat them like errors, then we deepen the suffering we hoped we would relieve. There's a quiet violence of fixing. And this is the hard truth that the inner elder eventually sees. Fixing, when unconscious, carries a subtle violence. Not the violence of force, but the violence of implication. the assumption that this shouldn't be happening, this shouldn't feel this way, or we need to move out of this. Even when spoken with kindness, these messages can leave you feeling unseen, rushed, or quietly invalidated. Because what they need most is not correction, but recognition. There's an ego hiding in there. And if we're honest, intervention often serves us as much as it serves the other person. Fixing may allow us to feel useful, to feel wise, to feel in control, but mostly it's probably to reduce our own discomfort in the presence of another's pain. The inner elder begins to ask a deeper question. Who is this really for? Sometimes the urge to fix is not about their healing at all, but our inability to sit in uncertainty, helplessness, or sorrow. But there's a turning point in elderhood. There comes a moment when we realize that some things are not meant to be fixed, not as a resignation, but as reverence. You see, grief isn't a detour, it's love continuing in another form. Aging isn't a failure, it's the body telling the truth about time. Unanswered questions are not deficits, they are invitations into mystery. And the soul is not broken, it's unfolding. It's not asking to be repaired, but for us to just witness it, to pay attention to it. We need to move from intervention to reverence. Not passivity and not indifference, but reverence. Reverence says this moment has its own intelligence. This experience deserves space. I'm not going to rush what's sacred, even if it's painful. That's Satsang in motion. Presence without manipulation. Companionship without control. When you were young, you asked, how do I fix this? But the inner elder asks, what's being revealed here? What wants to be honored rather than change? Can I stay present without turning this into a problem? These questions do not remove the pain, but they transform the way we meet it. And living this in real life comes in the smallest of moments when someone is grieving, and your offer isn't solutions, but just being there, your presence. Not saying it's going to get better, but I'm here. And when you're struggling, you allow space and curiosity and gentleness in its place. And if life feels a bit unresolved, you can stop forcing clarity and learn to live out the questions and let them unfold to you a little at a time. There's a deeper freedom of letting go of the illusion of intervention. It doesn't make you less loving. It makes your love less controlling, less anxious, less performative, less dependent on outcomes. And it's more spacious and patient and trustworthy. You begin to offer something rare, a presence that doesn't need to change anything in order to remain. So now, when you feel the need to fix something, just place a hand over your chest and breathe in once and just ask, what is this moment really asking of me? And before offering advice, slow down, take a couple of breaths, and let the other person's experience settle in your awareness without interpretation. Replace answers with curiosity. Instead of giving clarity, try asking, hey, what's this like for you? What feels most alive in this moment? Practice sitting with your own unresolved places. You can bless it. You don't have to fix it.
When we realize that fixing can carry a subtle violence, an implication that someone isn't okay as they are, it changes how we see our role. If the soul isn't a problem to be solved, then what is it? It's an unfolding that requires a witness. This brings us to a shift in posture. It's the move from doing to being, and the immense power found in simply sitting beside another person.
Now we shift into presence. We've been saying that it's not something to fix, but a presence that we need. And there comes a moment in the life of an elder, quiet, it's almost imperceptible, when something inside loosens up and a realization dawns. not as an idea, but more as a truth that you feel, that the deepest healing happens when nothing is being forced, when no one's trying to change you, when no one is trying to manage your experience, when no one's rearranging the moment into something more comfortable, just someone sitting beside you, attentive, open, and unafraid of whatever it is.
When you've been met in that way, even once, you begin to sense that this presence has a texture of its own. It isn't passive and it isn't withdrawal. It's a different way of being with another person. And that's where the next truth begins to emerge. This presence has its own rhythm, its own way of holding a moment without trying to shape it.
There is a kind of presence that does not rush in to solve. It doesn't hurry the moments along. It does not treat your experience as a problem to be managed. It just simply says, and not with words, that you're not alone in this and that you are enough. And there's a turning point in our lives where we go from doing into being. And at some point, the inner elder recognizes that not all healing comes from the doing part, but more with the being. This isn't a rejection of action. It's a recognition of the limits of action. Because there are moments when action can actually be intrusive, and advice is just so much noise, and fixing is just a subtle form of avoiding the real problems within. In those moments, something else is required, and it's not more effort, but it's a truer presence of who you really are. When nothing is being forced, the moment is allowed to be exactly what it is. Your pain doesn't justify itself. Your emotions don't have to resolve quickly. Silence doesn't have to be filled. And this creates a field of invisible permission where you can exhale. Stop performing. Stop editing your experience. And in that unforced space, you can begin to soften. Much of the modern relating is subtle management. We try to regulate how we and others feel. We steer conversations towards comfort. We move away from awkwardness or uncertainty. But the inner elder begins to see that when we try to manage someone's experience, we're really distancing them from their own truth. Management says, let's move this along. Let's make this easier. But presence says, no, this can stay. You can stay in this, and that difference is everything. There's a power in sitting beside someone. It sounds simple, but to sit beside someone means you're not above them where you're trying to fix them. You're not ahead of them trying to be their guide. You're not behind them and withdrawing and walking away. You are with them. You're equal. You're present. You're available. This kind of presence speaks directly to the nervous system. You don't have to go through this alone. Your body will hear it. Your soul will hear it. And when it does, something inside of you will unclench. These three qualities define the elder presence. First, you're attentive. You're here. You're not distracted. You're not waiting for your turn. You're receiving the moment as it unfolds. And two, you're open. You allow complexity, contradiction, and messiness. You do not narrow the experience into something that's manageable. And you're unafraid. You're not afraid of tears, or silence, or not knowing what to say, or the depth of what's being felt. And because you're unafraid, the other person begins to feel less afraid too. There's an unspoken language of presence that speaks without words. I'm not here to change you. You don't have to get better for me. Nothing about this moment makes me leave. You're not alone in this. You're enough. And somehow, that's enough. There's a way of cultivating this in our lives, and that's just learning to stay with things when discomfort arises. Just by pausing, just by taking a deep breath, and just sitting there, not fixing anything, not feeling like it's our responsibility to take care of. Just releasing the need to be useful, just being present. You don't have to earn your place in the moment through solutions. You can just trust in the moment. And you can just trust in the process that when nothing is being solved, something meaningful is still happening. You can become grounded in yourself. And the more at home you are within your own experience, the more capacity you will have to sit with someone else. It takes courage to not intervene in other people's lives or to overly intervene in our own lives.
It sounds so peaceful to simply sit beside someone, doesn't it? But in practice, it's anything but simple. It takes a specific, quiet kind of bravery to watch someone struggle and not put your hands on the wheel. This isn't about being indifferent. It's about a disciplined form of love. Let's talk about the courage of non-intervention and why holding back advice can be the most demanding act of all.
There's a kind of courage that rarely gets named. It doesn't look bold. It doesn't look heroic. It doesn't look like the courage we were taught to admire, where you run into the fire. It's the courage of resisting your reflex to fix. It's the courage to hold back your advice. It's to allow another person to unfold in their own way. It's to trust a process you cannot control, because intervention, for all of its good intention, often soothes our discomfort more than it eases somebody else's. Presence, on the other hand, asks something deeper of us. It asks us to trust that something wise is happening beneath the surface, even when we cannot see it, even when it feels slow, and even if it challenges every instinct that we have to step in. This is the courage of the inner elder, the courage to stay without stepping in, speaking up, taking control, making things happen. But the inner elder begins to recognize another form of courage, the courage not to act when action is driven by anxiety rather than wisdom. This courage is quiet. It's invisible. It rarely earns praise, but inwardly, it's the most demanding courage of all. The impulse to intervene arrives fast. It's almost automatic. But if we slow it down, we may notice what lives beneath it is the discomfort with others' pain, and anxiety when we're uncertain, and a desire to restore order, and a need to feel helpful and relevant or in control. But the inner elder begins to ask, am I responding to their need or just reacting to my discomfort? Sometimes that's the question that's most important. You see, holding back is not withholding love. Non-intervention is not indifference. It's not neglect. It's not emotional distance. It's staying without taking over. It's care without control. It's attentiveness without intrusion. You're no longer trying to author an outcome. You allow another person their right to process things. In practice, it can feel like you're standing near a fire and choosing not to pull someone out too quickly. We fear they're going to suffer longer than necessary, and we fear they're going to make mistakes, and we fear that things could get worse. And you know what? Sometimes they will. But the deeper truth is this: a person's process is not an obstacle to their growth. It is their growth. And interrupting it too soon can weaken their trust in themselves and prevent deeper understanding. Or it can create dependency instead of resilience. And the inner elder honors the process even when it's uncomfortable to witness. You've got to trust what can't be seen, and that's the heart of the teaching. Presence asks us to trust that something wise is unfolding, even if we can't see it. This trust asks us to release the need to understand everything, to ensure a positive outcome, the belief that we're responsible for how things turn out. Instead, it invites a deeper orientation, that life has its own intelligence, and that growth happens beneath the surface, and that not all transformation is visible in the moment. There's a mystery to unfolding, and the inner elder begins to sense that. Confusion can become clarifying. Pain can open unexpected doorways. Silence can deepen understanding. Struggle can shape your strength. But you can't rush it, and it has to unfold. Non-intervention becomes a way of honoring that unfolding. Now, this teaching doesn't deny that intervention has its place. There are moments when harm is imminent, boundaries are violated, and support's clearly requested. And the inner elder doesn't abandon discernment. But when intervention comes, it arises from clarity and not from reflex. You can know that you're doing inner elder presence when you're less reactive, less controlling, less hurried, more steady, more grounded, more trustworthy. And people will feel that around you, and they'll know when they're not being managed. So just check in with yourself and take that breath of restraint and the practice of staying back just a little bit without trying to steer everything. Your presence is the quiet transmission.
Once we find that courage to stay without taking over, we start to notice something remarkable. Communication begins to happen on a level that words can't reach. You start to realize that your own internal state, your calm, your openness, is actually contagious in the best way possible. This is what we call quiet transmission, the truth that who you are speaks much louder than anything you could ever say.
There's something at the heart of Satsang that cannot be taught in words. It's something you feel, a kind of knowing that arrives through the body long before your mind understands. It's the recognition that who you are speaks louder than anything you say. Your calm, your openness, your groundedness, these become a silent offering, and others, simply by being near you, begin to settle down. Not because you changed them or because you guided them, but because your presence gave them permission to return to themselves. This is the quiet transmission of truth. It's not dramatic, it's not performative, and it's not even intentional. It's just the natural radiance of a person who is at home in their own being. There's a deeper language beyond words, and for most of our lives we assume that we have to communicate through words. But the inner elder begins to see that the most important things are communicated long before we speak. Maybe it's our pace, or our tone, or the ease or tension that we carry. It's our willingness or unwillingness to be in a situation. This is the deeper language of presence, and it's always speaking, even in silence. Quiet transmission is not mystical. It's deeply human, and we've all felt it. You know what it's like to sit with someone who's calm and feeling yourself settle, being near someone and anxious and becoming even more anxious, or sensing authenticity without needing proof. This is what transmission is all about. It's the oldest form of communication that we have. Remember, who you are speaks first, and that who you are speaks louder than what you say. This is very humbling, but very liberating, because you can't fake presence. You can't hide agitation behind perfect words. You cannot offer peace. You do not embody yourself. But you also do not need to say the perfect thing, because what truly reaches another person is your sincerity, your steadiness, and your presence. So remain calm, not the absence of emotion, but just calm. This moment is survivable. Remain open. You don't have to be defensive or carry your agenda. There's room for whatever you bring is what you want to say. Stay grounded. I'm here and I'm staying. You can give people permission without words, and you're telling people, you can relax around me. You can be real. Nothing here needs to be hidden. Nothing here needs to be rushed, and nothing here will make me withdraw. This is the responsibility of presence, that who you are is always being communicated. Your inner life matters, not in a perfectionistic way, but an honest way. So you tend to your own reactivity, your own fears, your own need to control, not just for yourself, but because you realize you bring this into every space that you're in.
As we've seen, presence isn't passive. It's a form of stewardship. When you stop trying to manage the world and instead start inhabiting your own being, you step into a different kind of authority. It's an authority that doesn't need to be announced because it is felt. This brings us to the final movement of our conversation today, the Elder's Way, and the sacred gift of offering companionship with no agenda at all.
Well, as we've seen, presence isn't passive, and it's a form of stewardship. And there's a elder's way that we're going to close with today. It's a quiet mark of an elder. It's so subtle that it's often missed. It's so steady that it rarely draws attention. The elder doesn't rush in. They don't have to prove their wisdom. They trust their presence. They understand that the most sacred thing you can offer another human being isn't guidance, and it isn't insight, and it's not direction, but companionship without an agenda. That's the elder's way. It's a way that honors the dignity of another person's unfolding without trying to shape it. It's a different kind of authority. The authority of an elder isn't announced. It's not displayed. You don't say, I'm an elder, listen to me. Instead, it's felt. It doesn't depend on being right or being recognized or being needed. It arises from lived experience, from uncertainty that you've endured, and from a deep reconciliation with life as it is. The elder doesn't claim wisdom. You simply have stopped needing to prove it. There's no end of urgency. Urgency is often the child of anxiety, the need to fix quickly, the discomfort of not knowing, the pressure to make something happen. But the inner elder has learned something that time teaches slowly. What is real doesn't require rushing. And so we pause, not because we're disengaged, but because we trust that clarity takes time, that your emotions need space, and that life unfolds at its own pace. And our lack of urgency becomes our kind of meditation and medicine. It tells others, there's time, you're not behind. Take a moment and breathe. And this creates a quiet freedom. You can say less. You can admit uncertainty. You can remain silent without feeling diminished. You can trust in your presence. Most people trust in strategy and advice, in intervention and explanation. But an elder trusts something less tangible, that how they are matters more than what they do. And this trust isn't naive. It's born from seeing again and again that words often fall short and solutions aren't always appropriate. Presence, on the other hand, replaces things that explanation cannot. And so you don't really need to worry about your technique. Just be there. So, having companionship without an agenda may well be the heart of this teaching. And sometimes it's the most sacred thing you can offer another person. Companionship with no destination in mind, just companionship. This is a sacred space because it honors something fundamental, that another person's life is not yours to direct. Their timing, their process, their unfolding is worthy of respect. Companionship without agenda says, I trust your path even if it's unclear. I'm not going to interfere with what is yours to live. I'm here, not above you, but with you. And when you embody this way, something shifts in how you and others experience you. They feel less pressure, less judgment. Conversations deepen, silences can become comfortable. And people often leave not with answers, but with something more valuable, a sense that you've truly met them.
The wisdom of Satsang tells us that wholeness is not the result of correction. It is the fruit of presence. You don't have to be the source of transformation for everyone in your life. You only need to be the space in which transformation becomes possible. This week, I challenge you to look at the people you love and the person you see in the mirror and ask, what in me is waiting, not to be fixed, but to be met? Thanks for joining us on The Inner Elder. Please visit our website at theinnerelder.com. We'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe and share our podcasts with others. Also, please email us with your questions at connect@theinnerelder.com. Until next week, we wish you peace and all good.